This is the theme to the podcast. It's inspired by an old TV theme. One of the best I'd ever seen. So here it is, the theme to the podcast. What does Chris think?
About Deja Vu, not the 1985 Anthony Richard film starring Jacqueline Smith and Nigel Terry, or the 1997 film starring Stephanie Delane, or the 2005 film starring Kimberly Dean, not even the 2006 film starring Denzel Washington, or the 2018 Asian language film originally titled Deja Vu, which, of course, I'm a film guy, and I'll watch them and talk about them if you want me to. I'm willing. But that's not why I'm here today. We've all had that moment where the gears of the world seem to slip a tooth. You walk into a room you've never seen, or you listen to a stranger say something completely unremarkable, and you suddenly have a brain short circuit, and you feel like, I've been here. I've done this. We call it deja vu. But that label doesn't actually explain the phenomenon. It just allows us to file it away in a drawer so we can keep buying our groceries, paying our mortgages, and living without feeling like we're losing our grip on reality. If you talk to a hard scientist, they'll likely tell you that it's a neurological misfire. Clinically, it's defined as a conflictual dual-component state, an intense, subjectively inappropriate feeling of familiarity combined with a conscious awareness that the situation is actually entirely novel. They may say it's your mind misinterpreting retrieval cues, or suggest that one eye recorded the room a millisecond faster than the other, creating a delayed echo in your temporal lobe. It's clean, it's sterile, it's a great explanation. It also sounds a lot like, we're just making this up, please don't question us too closely. It treats the human brain like a faulty piece of French engineering, a luxury car with an electrical glitch in the dashboard, signaling a blinker malfunction. It's on. Oh, it's off. Now it's on. And so on. Modern neurologists might even try to dress it up by pointing out to the renal cortex, claiming that an inappropriate neural spike there triggers a false sense of familiarity before the hippocampus can step in and run a proper data verification check. They look at the machinery of the consciousness and say it's a localized latency error, an organic buffering wheel spinning in your gray matter. And to be fair, maybe that's all it is. But there's something that just keeps gnawing at me, that maybe that's just scientists' best answer, best understanding. I have three primary concepts: many worlds, spiritual worlds, and many lives. And I'm going to cover those in this episode. Starting with the many worlds theory. I mean, if you look at the stories we tell ourselves, the ones that have survived across centuries through different languages and cultures, we seem to collectively suspect that there's at least one layer beyond what we can understand. Science fiction is practically built on the premise that our reality isn't the only one. The sci-fi crowds love the idea of parallel dimensions. And if you want to get analytical and scientific about it, you can check out Hugh Everett's Many Worlds interpretation. The concept stems from quantum mechanics. At the subatomic level, particles exist in a hazy cloud of possibilities, what physicists call a wave function. In the traditional view of physics, when we measure a particle, that cloud collapses into one definitive reality. But back in 1957, Everett looked at that math and essentially asked, what if the wave function never collapses? Everett suggested that every time a quantum event has multiple potential outcomes, the universe splits. It fragments into parallel branches. If an electron can spin up or spin down, it does both, just in two separate, non-communicating realities. Scale that up to human decisions, and the implications get weird fast. I remember back in the early 2000s, I was debating which jeans to wear one morning. I had a pair of 501 button flies I had just worn a few days prior, and a clean pair of Walmart brand Faded Glory. My choice made, I wore them, and later that night, a female friend of mine was impressed with how the choice jeans fit, and she asked me what brand they were. A few days later, I was at work, and she brought her boyfriend in wearing a pair of Faded Glories from Walmart. Had I worn the 501s, she would not have bought him the faded glory. All that to say, there could be an alternate reality out there where I wore the 501s. Now, this isn't a parallel worlds reality episode, so we're going to skip back to Deja Vu real quick. Many in sci-fi look at it and see a temporary thinning of the walls between those branches. It's a brief, accidental interference pattern, a quantum tunneling of consciousness, where you brush up against an alternate version of your own life. You didn't experience this moment before. You're just catching a reflection of the guy, one universe over, who decided to wear the faded glories over the 501s. It's a fun thought experiment. It makes the universe feel like a massive, multi-tiered house where we're all occasionally overhearing footsteps through the ceiling or voices from below. Now, moving on, I have a soft rule about avoiding hard religious talk. People tend to get rigid when you bring up dogma, and once someone drops a heavy anchor of absolute certainty into a conversation, the conversation usually becomes nothing but a debate, then dissolves into name-calling, and people shutting down. But personally, I prefer to keep my eyes open and look at everything without needing a specific handbook to validate my thoughts. That said, I do have a semi-faith-based theory about this whole deja vu business. Let's look at the basic fabric of the universe. If you believe in a creator or a higher intelligence or whatever name you want to give the architecture behind the curtain, you have to assume that that entity isn't bound by the same linear tracking system of time that we are. Mystics and theologians across traditions have spent millennia trying to articulate this, pointing out the concepts of the eternal now. In some Eastern philosophies, you find descriptions of the Akashic records. If you aren't familiar, the basic premise, rooted heavily in the 19th century theosophy, is that there's a cosmic library out there in the ether, a grand, non-physical hard drive storing every thought, action, emotion, and event that ever has happened, is happening, or will happen in the universe. It's like the ultimate director's cut of human history, complete with all the deleted scenes and eternal monologues that no one is ever supposed to see. In Western theology, it frames it similarly but altogether different. God doesn't wait for things to happen. Humans are stuck on a conveyor belt. We see the past as a closed book, the present as a single stepping stone, and the future as a fog. But God, by definition, exists outside our clumsy understanding of time. Where that entity sits, time isn't a straight line. It's a map laid out flat on a table. The beginning, the middle, and the end are all happening simultaneously. And here's the thing. If we have a soul, an eternal component that outlasts our biological machinery, then once we die, we step off that conveyor belt. We then exist outside of time as well. So what if deja vu isn't a glitch in our brain's hard drive? What if it's a moment of crosstalk? What if deja vu is simply the exact microsecond where your timeless, eternal self connects to your timed, earthly self? Think of it as a brief alignment between your localized ego and your non-local soul. For a fraction of a second, the version of you that sees the whole map touches the version of you that's just trying to navigate the traffic on the highway. You get a sudden, overwhelming sense of familiarity because on some level that your conscious mind can't process, you've already seen how the whole story plays out. It's kind of like standing in a theater watching a movie that you feel like you've already seen, not because you remember the film, but because you happen to catch a glimpse of the projectionist looking down from the booth, holding the entire reel in his hands. Now, yet another idea beyond the parallel worlds and the eternal soul is the many lives theory. Many believe that this current life that we're living is not the only one. That when you die, there's a rebirth into a new life. Reincarnation adds an interesting wrinkle to the idea of who we are. What if when you are reborn, small, unrelated glimpses of the past life linger? Like faint echoes on the chalkboard of the mind. Some things carry over. Then, when in this life we experience a situation that feels like the one we lived in the past life, it triggers that deja vu. Remember back in episode 5, we talked about dreams? that the brain uses them to defend against losing our sight? What if deja vu is just the brain defending itself against learning that we have lived through this whole life before? At the end of the day, we're all just doing our best to make sense of a world that feels like it's slipping a gear every Tuesday afternoon. Whether you lean into the cold, sterile elegance of a brain misfire, or the dizzying scope of a split quantum reality, or the quiet weight of a soul catching a brief glimpse at the master blueprint, the results are the same. Deja vu isn't going to fix your credit score. It certainly won't cook you dinner. But it does offer a brief, necessary pause, a moment where the background noise of life cuts out, and you're reminded that the universe might just be a little bit bigger, weirder, and more connected than the daily grind lets on. Maybe we've lived it before, maybe a version of us is living it somewhere else, or maybe our gray matter just needed a tune-up. Either way, the blinker is still flashing, the road is still ahead of us, and the only real choice we have to do is to keep driving, pay attention to the details, and try not to take ourselves too seriously along the way. Could there be more non-generic scientist-speak explanations? Sure. And if you have one, let me hear it. As to these theories, which one do I think is right? I think I lean more toward the many worlds, with a close second being that spiritual worlds, and of course, lastly, that many lives. But I'm obviously not trained in any of the disciplines necessary to make a true, concrete statement or verify any of my ideas. But the funny thing about this platform is, I'm Chris, and this is what I thought.